average size classroom of 20 to 24 kids, just statistically, you must have a handful of kids every year that have issues with attention and hyperactivity. So I'd like to talk with you a little bit about some strategies used in the classroom to deal with that. To begin with, why don't you tell me a little bit about some strategies you use to deal with distractibility?
Great. In a classroom of anywhere between 20 to 24 kids, there's bound to be a lot of sound, a lot of noise, a lot of just action going on. And for some kids, that could be really distracting. The most basic thing that I do to help this is simply preferential seating, putting a lot of extra thought into where that child is sitting and who they're sitting with. In the beginning, in the front of the classroom helps a lot of kids because I'm right there almost the whole time, and if they get a little bit distracted, I can just kind of knock on their desk, kind of remind them what they should be focusing on. But for some kids, that's too much. So I like to sit them in the back of the class where there's less sound and less action going on, so they have less things to distract them with.
So fidgeting and hyperactivity is another core symptom of ADHD. So tell me how you manage that in a classroom environment.
Excellent. Well, one of my favorite things actually is that I have a box of fidget tools on my desk all year, and there's actually 2 of them on my desk. And kids are welcome to, at any point, get up and grab one if they need one. And we do a lot of talk about good choices. My favorite choice is the Rubik's Cube, because I find that you can move the pieces around without having to look at it, and it kind of gets some of the energy that kids are feeling out while allowing them to pay attention. For some kids, they might like a ball to squeeze, or they might need to use a seat cushion. This is a bumpy seat cushion. It has bumps on it to kind of give it some texture for kids. And in order to sit still, they have to use a lot of energy, but it keeps them still because it does want them to move around on it. So by using this, it gets them to fidget, but the fidgeting is keeping them still.
So I imagine with these sorts of things, there's kind of a tipping point where it could become more of a distraction than a help. Mm-hmm. How do you manage that? How do you monitor that?
That's a great question. I actually can't use these because they distract me. They don't help me. And for a lot of kids, this won't help them. They think it might, and then they end up bouncing on it like I do, and it doesn't help them. Another example would be a kid who would take the ball as a fidget tool and then throw it and catch it while I'm teaching math. That's not a good focus tool because they're not paying attention to me, they're paying attention to this. In that case, we do a lot of talk within the whole class about making good choices. And if they need to look at it to use it, then it's not a good choice for them because they're drawing focus away from the lesson and putting the focus onto the tool. I have some smaller tools for kids to use as well that might help them, that just have little pieces that move so that they can get some energy out there. And again, tools that they don't have to look at are the ones that I want them to be using.
So difficulties with organization is another issue that a lot of kids with ADHD have. Tell me how you deal with that in a classroom.
Absolutely. I use checklists for kids who have a really hard time bringing all their assignments home at the end of the day. So it has did you bring your math homework, your science homework, your reading homework? And they have to check off every day with a dry erase marker, and I laminate the checklist so that every day they just use the same one and monitor themselves. A lot of kids, they need help with that. They need some support in class and at home using these checklists, but usually after some time using this, it becomes an independent activity. In addition to help with organization, another piece that becomes difficult for a lot of kids is writing, especially when you have ADHD. Writing is challenging because you have a lot of ideas in your head that you have to manage and organize in your head to write. I use graphic organizers a lot for kids because I find that even if you get distracted while you're working, you have it all laid out for you, so there's not as much question of, what was I talking about before? What did I want to say? You have it all planned out for themselves. In addition, every student in the class uses a homework organizer where every day there's a section for them to write each subject's assignments every single day. So it becomes a routine to help them stay organized.
So another thing that can be challenging for many kids is following directions, particularly directions that include many steps. Tell me about how you manage that in a classroom setting.
One of the first things that I do to deal with direction following, especially complex directions, is I write them on the board. Absolutely, that's the first thing that I do. If it's written on the board, it's permanent for the kids so that they can see it and see what is expected of them. In addition, what I do once I have it on the board is I chunk the directions and say, this is the first part that you need to worry about. Don't worry about the last part. Just do this first part, and then we move on and get through all the directions. I find that if you give them all the directions at once, even if they're written on the board, kids can get a little overwhelmed because it seems like a lot to do. So by chunking it, it breaks into manageable pieces.
John, thanks very much. I mean, it sounds like those are some wonderful strategies that you use and probably are a great benefit to the kids that you work with.
Thanks.